Welcome to the tutorial, Troubleshooting the Jost Inboard Sliding Fifth Wheel. Here you will learn how to check adjustment screws, how to resolve release mechanism issues, and the importance of periodic maintenance. During this presentation, the top plate has been removed. If the adjustment screws are uneven or if the slide bracket does not slide freely, do this. First, loosen the jam nuts, then tighten all 4 screws until they contact the slide rack, making sure all 4 screws extend the same distance. Then loosen each screw 1/2 turn and set the jam nut. Next, test by sliding the fifth wheel fore and aft, checking for free movement. Then readjust as required. Now let's look at how to resolve release mechanism issues. If the release mechanism is closing sluggishly, to give additional closing force, the double coil spring can be relocated. Relocate the double coil spring by placing 5/16 inch holes in the cylinder mount and the pivot arm as shown. Clean all pivot points and spray with penetrating oil like PB Blaster or Croil. And grease the center pivot under the bottom of the pivot bracket as shown. Then reattach the double coil spring into the new holes. To free up the plunger, remove the bolt attaching rod end of the cylinder to the pivot arm and swing the cylinder away from the mechanism. Place a pipe over the pivot arm and open the release mechanism to break free any corrosion, dirt, and debris. Next, turn air off and disconnect the air line from the cylinder. Energize the air and drain any water from the lines. The Jost cylinder requires 90 psi to operate. If the air is not getting to the cylinder, check for air system failure. Now measure the retracted rod extension. Then energize the air to the cylinder and verify that the difference between the extended length and the retracted length is 5 inches. If necessary, drain any water from the air cylinder. It is at the end of the system and may have collected water. If the rod does not extend or the difference is less than 5 inches, replace the cylinder. If the distance is equal to 5 inches, the cylinder is okay, but the slider may be out of square. Check the slide plate to make sure the front is square with the length of the plate. Loosen the mounting bolts and adjust the slide bed or mounting angle using a large square or by measuring the diagonals. If alignment cannot be achieved with the existing bolt hole clearances, correct the problem by measuring and modifying the mounting angle to fit. After properly adjusting, tighten all mounting bolts to their proper torque. Next, inspect that the locking plunger teeth are aligned with the rack on both sides. If teeth are aligned, lock and unlock to check for proper operation. Then, slide the bracket to the front or rear stop and check clearance. If there is more clearance on one side, the bracket is out of square and will need to be repaired or replaced. Now let's check the air cylinder for proper operation. If the cylinder does not operate freely, you need to disassemble and clean the mechanism as follows. Remove the double coil spring. Remove the lock nut and washer. Remove the cotter pin and clevis pin. Rotate the linkage bars out of the way. Remove the lock nut and washer from the pivot arm and remove the pivot arm. Remove bushing from pivot arm and replace with a new part SK77292-01 and reassemble with marine-grade anti-seize grease on all pivot points. Remember to keep the mechanism free and operating freely with periodic maintenance. Clean and remove debris from the mechanism as required. Unlock, move the slider, and relock. Lubricate pivot points with penetrating oil such as PB Blaster or Croil as required. This concludes the tutorial, troubleshooting the Jost Inboard sliding fifth wheel. For additional information on this or any other Jost products, please contact Jost International at 1770 Hayes Street, Grand Haven, Michigan 49417, phone number 616-846-7700, or at www.jostinternational.com.